Okay, this says I am live. Okay. Maybe turn up my volume. All right, can you hear me? Just let me know if you can hear me. That would be amazing. Hello. Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Noelia. All the way from India. Rightio. Welcome to Collapse Broadcast. I'm Judy V. I'm not here, as I always start with this these sessions, Collapse Broadcast. I am not here as a teacher or a coach. I'm here because I name structures that no longer work and remove them. So, Noelia, 12:30 a.m. in the morning. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for joining us live. Appreciate that. It's good. So I didn't build another method. I built language for the moment people realized the entire model failed. I'm author of the book, What is Mimic and What Lies Beyond It. The book isn't the point. This book isn't the point. It's not about the book. It's the collapse that it names. That's the point. And I'm here to end the loop. This is not coaching or mentoring. As I said, this is about deletion. And today we're deleting that which kills authorship. Hello, Meg. You don't lose authorship when your life falls apart. That's the part that most people get wrong. You don't lose authorship in crisis or breakdown or chaos. You don't lose it when things are obviously wrong. That's what makes it so dangerous. You lose it when your life looks fine, but feels slightly pre-decided. And as we navigate through today's Collapse broadcast, you will feel the impact of authorship lost. It is also something that no one speaks about. That's the tragedy of this topic. You lose authorship when your life looks fine, but feels slightly pre-decided. That's how you know you've lost it. When nothing is wrong enough to justify stopping, when everything functions, when you're capable, responsible, self-aware, you don't wake up powerless, you wake up responding already behind your own day. By the time the thought appears, what should I do today? The day is already halfway executed. David Hawkins mapped this decades ago when he showed the mind is hijacked in 1/10,000th of a second. By the time a thought appears, the decision is already fired. And that means what you call choice is often just narration catching up to execution. And by the time the thought has appeared, it's not authorship speaking, it's mimic. Or more precisely, identity narrating what has already moved. Thought does not initiate. Thought reports, and which is why in my model of the world and what we do, mindset is not the work. Because thought does not initiate, thought reports. It arrives after posture, after momentum, after the pattern has already fired. So when you think you're deciding, you're often just listening to a voice explaining why something already happened. And that's why the thought sounds reasonable. That's why it sounds familiar. And it even feels like you. It's mirroring you. But authorship doesn't speak in sentences because authorship moves. Thought is what comes later, after the move, to justify the movement that was never questioned. And that's why your day feels pre-decided, not because you're not because you're wrong, not because you're anxious or ungrounded, not because you're not aware, but because authorship has already gone before awareness arrived. The emails are already shaping the tone. The calendar is already dictating movement. Your body is already bracing, adjusting, accommodating, not because you chose any of it, but because something else got there first. And this is the part that everyone misses in the whole world of self-development, self-help. It's not dramatic. Nothing dramatic happens when authorship is lost. There's no alarm. There's no chaotic moment. There's no trauma. There's no internal warning. There's no emotional collapse. And this is why it works, because you don't feel hijacked. You feel responsible. You feel controlled. You even feel busy. You don't feel powerless. You feel reasonable. And that's how authorship disappears quietly, cleanly, completely, without resistance. It slips out of the room while you're being functional. And this doesn't happen because something went wrong. It happened because this is how the system trains you to survive since you're dot, from the beginning. Authorship is expensive, make no mistake. It makes friction, it disrupts rhythm, and it risks exclusion. So the world teaches something else instead. Fit in, but stand out just enough. Resonate, but don't rupture. Belong, but don't deviate. Compete, but stay recognizable. Be different, but not too different. Every one of those instructions rewards the same thing, which ensures authorship stays missing, and that is self-monitoring. A self-monitoring, or when you self-monitor, or a self-monitoring person, is incompatible with authorship. They cannot coexist. Because the moment you're tracking how you're landing, you're no longer issuing command. You are adjusting, you are compensating. You're always in preparation. That adjustment then becomes habit. The habit becomes normal, and the normal becomes invisible. And because the system rewards it, socially, professionally, emotionally, it doesn't uninstall itself. It stays, not as trauma, not as fear, but as reasonableness. So we stay reasonable. And when authorship leaves, the body has to adapt structurally, not metaphorically, not emotionally, but structurally. The body was never designed to decide, direct, or compensate at the same time. It was designed to root. This body, your body, is designed to root. So when authorship disappears, that rooting shuts down and the body starts compensating. It braces, it holds, it manages, it enforces. It tries to do the job of the entire system alone. And that is what takes the body out of what we call blueprint, your original design. your original, your origin. That's what it is. It takes the body out of origin, out of blueprint. And then what I call the trilogy of being, which is what this is, this existence of you, this body being and planet, this trilogy of being, it takes that out of harmony. And the body becomes the shock absorber for everything that's missing. And that's when effort replaces flow. That's when tension replaces direction. And that's when the body starts aging faster than time. Because it's being forced to carry command. It was never meant to hold. Then inflammation, fatigue, decay, not as illness, but as consequence, starts happening. And if you listen carefully, you already know where this shows up in your daily life and in your body. Not as a pain you need to fix, not as a symptom to interpret, as signals of compensation. A tight jaw that's always on, the breath that never quite drops, the fatigue that sleep doesn't touch, the posture that holds before you decide. Nothing dramatic, nothing wrong, just the body doing extra work because authorship is not there to do it. And it shows up in the first email you answer without deciding to answer it, not because you had to, not because it was urgent, but because it felt expected. You didn't check, you didn't choose, you responded. It shows up in the message that you soften. Not because what you wanted to say was wrong, but because you didn't want the friction. So your truth gets adjusted. The edge gets rounded. The tone gets managed. So you tell yourself you're being considerate, emotionally intelligent, even skilled, but something else has just made the decision for you. Not you, not your blueprint, not codex. An identity stepped in the absence of authorship, not loudly, forcefully, but automatically. It didn't argue, it didn't ask for permission. It simply continued the pattern that's been running for years. And that's why it feels familiar, and that's why it feels reasonable. That's why it doesn't register as loss, which is what it is. And you can see it clearly here. It shows up for example, in the meeting where you already know how it will end. You know who will speak. You know what won't change. You know the outcome before it starts, and still you show up as if it's undecided. Not because you believe it is, but because the identity that manages continuity is already taken the microphone. It's already taken the wheel. It shows up in the moment you explain your decision when no one actually asked. You hear yourself justifying, clarifying, contextualizing, as if permission is still required, as if command needs to be translated into something acceptable. It shows up in the yes that comes out of your mouth before you've checked whether you meant it. The yes sounds polite, responsible, normal, and only later, sometimes much, much later, does your body realize it never actually agreed. It shows up in the pause that you call being thoughtful. That's you actually waiting for internal permission, waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel clear or feel aligned, as if movement requires approval. When your body is rooting as blueprint, no permission, no approval is required. It roots. None of this is dramatic or even traumatic, and that's why it's not been an area of focus, because it's not dramatic, it's not traumatic, People like to focus on the big adrenaline hits, but this is core. This is key. It's not abuse. It's not pathology. It's not even failure. It's small, constant, moment by moment, day after day, month after month, year after year, decade after decade of constant concession. And because it's small, it stays invisible. Because nothing feels wrong enough to fix. You're functional. You're capable, you're responsible, you're aging like the person next to you, you're decaying at the same rate as everyone around you. You've done the work, you've gained the insight, you have phenomenal awareness. You understand your patterns, you can name your conditioning, you can regulate your nervous system, you know why you do what you do. You're not unconscious, far from it, but still your day runs you more than you run it. And here's what it quietly turns into. Your environment starts running your life instead of your life being lived as blueprint. Calendar before command, context before choice, reaction before direction, nothing dramatic, nothing oppressive, just life being answered instead of issued. And this is core. That's the moment people miss. It's not a breakdown, it's not a crash. It's just the realization, I'm not choosing as much as I thought I was. At what point do you wait to get there? At what point in your life have you realized that? I'm not choosing my life. Nothing fell apart, nothing blew up, nothing tragic. You just start noticing that your day keeps happening before you do. You're not overwhelmed. You may not even be lost or feel lost. You're just slightly late to your own life. That's what it feels like. The subtle, uncomfortable sense that life is always slightly ahead of you, that you're responding more than initiating, managing more than commanding. That's a huge one. Because without authorship, you're not commanding life or issuing commands, or you are managing life, managing body. You're responding more than initiating, managing more than commanding. And you stop directing your life and start being carried by it. Life stops responding to you and you start adjusting to it. Most people don't even notice when this happens. Just one day they're responding, adapting, coping, and it feels normal, becomes habit. And that's the moment you realize you're a leaf in the wind of life, not the force shaping it. You become the leaf, you become a leaf in the wind of life and not the hurricane in your life or the hurricane of your life. Here's the misconception that most people have about this point, about authorship. They think authorship is about big choices, and that's what's going through your mind right now, is having authorship means big choices, big decisions, big moves. It's none of that. People think it's career moves, relationships, boundaries, purpose. They think that if they make the right decision or the right big decision, everything will change. It won't. Because authorship isn't lost in the big moments, it's lost in the micro moments, the microseconds, in tone, timing, response, explanation, justification. And by the time you're making the big decisions, the structure is already set. The track has already been laid. The posture is already chosen and the momentum is already moving. The big decision then is just the theater. And this is why having insight, awareness, never saved you, never changed anything. Because insight talks to identity. Identity explains, an explanation never issues command. You can know exactly what's happening and still watch yourself do it again tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Not because you're unconscious, unaware, unhealed, undisciplined, because knowing was never where authorship lived. You don't think your way back into authorship. That is not possible. You didn't choose most of your day, each and every day. You inherited it. And you just keep going, you just kept going. And by the time you noticed, you thought the problem was decision making or the choices you made. It wasn't, because something else was already missing, and that something is authorship. Authorship, again, because a lot of people confuse this as well and miss it. Authorship is not confidence. Confident people still live pre-decided lives. Authorship is also not clarity. Clear people still explain themselves endlessly. Authorship is not self-trust. You can trust yourself deeply and still ask permission before you move. Authorship is also not self-expression. Expression often happens after authorship is already gone. Authorship is not empowerment, not leadership language. It's not stepping into your power. None of that is authorship. Those are performances that happen after authorship has already been replaced. They're compensation, not command. So now you can see why all the self-development and self-help has been misdirecting. So what does authorship actually feel like? Not philosophically, not metaphorically, but without mysticism, what does it actually feel like? It's quiet. And you move before you explain, before thought. You act without checking how you feel first. You don't weigh up the options. You don't need to convince yourself. You move. There's no internal committee, no debate, no waiting, no needing. You do not ask, can I handle this? And you do not scan for readiness. Things just move. Not recklessly or impulsively, but cleanly, decisively. And that move is always blueprint. It doesn't announce itself, and it feels very normal. It feels unimpressive. It doesn't come with lightning bolts or fireworks. But people miss the moment because they feel socially rewarded, responsible, considered, or considerate, self-aware, emotionally intelligent. When it's thought out. And they are all excellent disguises for an operating system without an author. In my world, that is quiet theft. Authorship is not taken from you, it's quietly replaced over time by pattern, habit, expectation, internal management, internal narration, regulation, explanation. Nothing external or internal attacks you. Something just starts running things instead. So if your life feels like it's being decided slightly ahead of you, and you're always catching up to your own actions, this is not a mindset issue, a worthy issue, confidence issue. If movement requires checking, readiness, or internal agreement, that's not maturity, that's authorship already gone. And this is the part that I'm not going to dress up and I'm not going to soften. Authorship is not restored through effort, and it's not restored through awareness, and you cannot restore it through better decisions or any form of regulation, and absolutely no amount of healing will restore authorship. Authorship returns only when the interference that replaced it is removed, is deleted, not improved, not integrated, removed. And that's why what I do isn't coaching. That's why this isn't coaching, because coaching teaches you to operate better inside a structure. What we are talking about here is collapse. And collapse doesn't add capacity, it removes the false operator. So if something in you already knows that your day is being decided before you decide, that knowing is accurate. You're not missing discipline. You're living inside a structure that no longer has an author. And once that becomes visible, it can't keep running, because once it's seen, it cannot be unseen. You didn't lose authorship loudly, you lost it quietly over time. And quiet things only survive while they're unseen. So nothing needs to be fixed here. Something needs to stop running in your place. So if what you've heard here during this collapse broadcast feels familiar, it may not feel dramatic or shocking, but just accurate, that's because this is not new information for you. It's because something in your body already knew, and your thinking kept explaining away. Your thoughts kept explaining it away. That's how you feel? Get a copy of What is Mimic on Amazon. This is what the book is for, not to teach you, not to motivate you, and it certainly does not give you a process. What is Mimic names the structures that quietly take over when authorship isn't present. And it removes them by being seen clearly. You don't read it to understand it. You read it to recognize. And once you recognize something that's been running your life, it can't keep running. Also, on Monday, 23 February, I'm opening a live call, How Wealth Roots When Interference is Gone. It's not mindset, it's not strategy, it's not manifestation. It's just what happens when authorship returns. And your life, including money, stops being managed by pattern. So if you're tired of effort producing motion but not direction, this call will make sense. Not because it promises anything, but because it explains why so much never worked. And I'll put the link in this after I finished. Or if Tiny's still on, I know he was doing some clearings. If he's still on, maybe you have the link, put it into the comments. But for now, don't do anything with this, with what we discussed today. Just notice tomorrow or later or throughout the rest of today how often your day tries to run ahead of you. That's the moment. And once you see it, once you can see it, you're no longer inside it. And that's the key. With authorship, you root, blueprint, origin, truth. And then creation is not from effort, it's from flow. With what I call a harmonized trilogy being. And if you don't know what the trilogy being is, I speak about it a little bit in this book. Body, being, and planet. Body is key. It leads when it has authorship. If you don't have authorship, body doesn't lead. So notice for the rest of today and tomorrow how often your day tries to run ahead of you. As I said, the moment you see it, you're no longer inside it. And you can reclaim authorship. So Tiny has posted the link. That's on the 23rd of February. Until then, I shall see you at the next Collapse broadcast.